Snowflake, it's trading, but is it trading up or down on news of a big management shakeup? Find out right now on The Rebel's Edge. Bang!
One live.
Welcome back to The Rebel's Edge. Pete,
Yeah.
that's the guy chuckling over there. Delighted that the PCE news is finally out. And yeah, that's top of our show with the Macro Minute. But remember, we bring you Macro Minute. We also bring you fantastic futures and then our take on 4 stocks. Not just, oh, here's the news on the stock. I flagged it. Nope. We're going to tell you whether we like it or don't like it, whether we'd buy it or not. And then you have to decide if it's an appropriate investment for you, because we are not your investment advisors. We are traders, educators, and we've got some pretty neat subscription products. You want to know about any of those, folks? Just go down to the bottom down there of the screen, marketrebellion.com/get started, and you can see about all of our educational and subscription offerings. All right, Pete. So PCE, it comes out today, and it comes out exactly in line. But do you think that was bullish, or do you think it's bearish, or do you think it's exactly in line as neutral?
People all interpreted it to be pretty daggone bullish, John. That's the facts. I mean, we were going into this, we're down about 130 or so on the Dow. Obviously, you look at that, you look at what's going on with the NASDAQ and everything else, and suddenly you get this number, right? And as you said, basically in line. You also had the core side of it, but whatever. I mean, it's another thing, another data point, and according to the Fed, the most important data point for them. So with all that being said, before you could even blink, John, once that news was out, we're up triple digits on the Dow. We're flying on the NASDAQ, but we're starting to give a lot of that back. So I'm starting to lean a little bit more towards, well, it's positive, but there's a little bit of a neutrality there. I don't know. What about you?
I'm going to say, Pete, that it was just as you said, initially bullish, because they were just a sigh of relief as much as anything, Pete.
Yeah.
But inflation still is not going down. Is it lower than it was a year ago? Okay. No, it's not. It's still up versus a year ago. But the amount that it's up is not up more than the street was looking for. So that's the good news. Like I say, that's pretty thin gruel if you really want to know, Pete. So I was not wildly bullish. I'm not wildly bearish about the number either, folks. I'm just saying that in line doesn't necessarily mean we're off to the races after people have been taking profits in NVIDIA and a whole bunch of tech stocks this week. And then we've got Snowflake and all the stocks that Pete and I are going to cover right now. So yeah, that's an interesting paradox, if you will, Pete. Let's talk now about fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Well, fantastic futures, Pete. I'm going to say that sugar is breaking down today. And Pete's been talking for weeks about cocoa, of course, which has been doing the opposite, just going up, up, up. But sugar is, of course, a main component to one of the things that you'd use that cocoa for, and that's making chocolate. But he also has pointed out about the medical side of cocoa and so forth. So I'm going to say sugar going down, Pete. It's a bit of a relief. That's nice, because a 3% drop is good for everybody but the guys that are harvesting it or long sugar. So I'm going to say it's a good thing.
Yeah, I was focused on volatility, John, although, it's shifting around a little bit. When I first started preparing for the day and looking at what we're going to talk about here on the Rebel's Edge for the fantastic futures, I was looking at the volatility index, which was down 3.5% today. That's a pretty decent chuck to the downside, right?
Yep.
But it's starting to get a little bit less of that and starting to perk up just a little bit, because we gave away a lot of what we had, and especially you were just talking about the Dow. It was up triple digits. Now it's not. The NASDAQ was up triple digits. It's kind of hanging around. So we'll see how that actually plays out. But nonetheless, I think the volatility of volatility is getting more and more interesting all the time, John. It's in a fairly tight range, but nonetheless, we could call it probably what, 12 and a half to maybe 17 would probably be the range that it's in right now. So it's relatively tight, but it's a very interesting spot for us to be right now. And let's just remind everybody, a 16 VIX means that the S&P will move 1% on a daily basis. So always keep that in mind as well.
Yep. And in case you were wondering how we get to that, folks, it's the square root of 256, the square root of the approximate number of trading days, not the number of days in a year, the trading days, because of course the market doesn't really move when the market's closed. We might imply a big open or a big close that drives the markets up or down, but during the days, Saturday, Sundays, and holidays when we don't trade, that's why we use 256. Anyway, all right, Pete, let's talk about Snowflake, because this one came out and it was pounded. It is still down 20%. 2025 revenue is not going to be what people were looking for. Also, management shakeup. The company announced that their CEO would be replaced effective now, immediately. And the only reason anybody replaces a CEO like that is either A, death, or B, number two possibility would be, well, we think that the buck stops with him or her. And in this case, they said, they're out.
There's a third panel, though, that you could open up, and sometimes that's not so fun to talk about, but we've seen it happen with Intel and some of the others, John, and oftentimes, and it's a man, oftentimes there's some sort of
hanky-panky
affair, so to speak, or a little hanky-panky going on, however you want to phrase it. Not so good when that happens. We've seen it with McDonald's as well over the years. Slowing rev growth, and when you look at, John, what they talked about from the outlook, even though they've got a great balance sheet, and they do, they have a terrific balance sheet, and the earnings actually looked okay, right? 35 cents. That was the earnings versus a year ago. It was only 14 cents. So when you put all that together, what you come up with is, what does the guidance really look like? And that's what didn't look very good. And because of that, this is a stock that's down about 20%. I will say, though, I love the balance sheet. So this is a company that I think that if things start to move back in the direction that they need them to, if they can get something going as far as a CEO, I think things will turn pretty rapidly for Snowflake. But I ain't jumping on it right now.
Normal turnover, folks, is 5 million shares. That's an active stock for a $190 stock or wherever it is right now, Pete. But the fact that it's traded 26 million so far today means that there were a lot of people perhaps taking profits on the drop, and a lot of other people that said, man, until we know if there was something that was going on that was untoward, as Pete mentioned, not just potentially, hanky-panky, but maybe manipulation of something, we're going to step to the sidelines. That's the prudent move, I think. But overall, this company data-based basically for the cloud, I think that's a good space to be in, Pete. So if they sound the all clear that the CEO left because of something like you mentioned, perhaps inappropriate, we're not accusing anybody, but we're saying if that's the reason, rather than manipulation of numbers or other stuff, then I think the stock can rebound nicely because this one's in a good spot. All right, let's talk about OKTA, Pete, because also surging instead of falling, surging by more than the amount that Snowflake was down. And their Q4 earnings had, I call it, robust guidance, Pete, for the next quarter. And it's cybersecurity. That's also something that you can't get enough cybersecurity in today's world. So if you're good at it, like OKTA is, I think that's a reason to own this stock. So I would happily still hold on, Pete.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. Hitting 52-week highs. The only thing you might question a little bit, but it's very difficult to question much of anything because everything looked pretty good here. But the PE at a 44, that might get you a little bit to say, well, it's a little bit rich. But that being said, subscription revenue up 20%. Their revenue overall up 19% year over year. Those numbers look great. They had the strong guide. Everything looks pretty sharp to me, John. I mean, even the free cash flow, they have very few shorts in this particular name. I think there's a lot of reasons to be very bullish. And the fact that this stock hit 112, established new 52-week highs, I think that potentially under the right circumstances of the backdrop of the markets, and everything that's going on, obviously, on the NASDAQ side, this is a name that probably has a little bit more room to the upside. So I'd be keeping a very, very close eye on it. And any pullbacks might be opportunities.
I am exactly the same, Pete. And I would remind people that this one came public in 2017 and adjusted for any things that went on as far as, splits and all the rest. It was $25 a share. It was up over 321. Mm-hmm. So, and that's based on where it is right now. This pricing, it would have been 300 back then, Pete. It's $105 a share now. Do you think this thing can go significantly higher than 105? Yeah, I do. I'm not saying it has to retrace back to the pandemic highs, but certainly somebody in cybersecurity that has been doing it for a long time is one to keep an eye on and to watch. So yeah, I am right there with you, Pete. All right, let's talk about Duolingo, which means dose languages. Dos. So anyway, it means 2 languages or more. Well, they teach people online or with apps and all the rest how to speak multiple languages. Maybe it's English to Spanish, which is me. Well, or moi, if I used my French, Pete. So anyway, stock is up big. Expectations and outlook are very strong. And I do like the way these guys teach. Their competitors are like Babbel and several others, but these guys have carved out a really nice niche. So I like the way DUOL is moving, Pete.
There's a real good reason why this thing is up as much as it is, John. I think the last time I looked, and I'm not looking at it right now, but it was up about 24%. Daily active users, that's up monstrous, 64%. I look at the monthly active users as well. That's up 46%. So they've got some great numbers. You look at the bookings, everything sort of adds up. A year ago, John, these guys lost 35 cents. Now they're putting up they made 26 cents. There's a lot of strength and there's a lot behind this thing right now. I like what I'm seeing here. It's not something I've really followed very closely. I don't know it really well like I'd like to, but I certainly has my attention right now because these numbers are pretty extraordinary. And to your point, there is some competition out there, but clearly, given the growth that these guys are showing and the fact that now, after losing significant amounts of money, are now making significant amounts of money, I think this really points in the direction of, hey, this thing has room to the upside. This is not just a one-day event. I think this is something that over the next 6 months, 8 months, really could have some pretty nice levels in which it could hit.
Yeah, and it is my language teacher of choice, Pete. So living down here in Puerto Rico, of course, it's dual languages. There's the population, most of the young population speaks English as well as Spanish, Pete. But the older population and a lot of the business people, it's Spanish speaking primarily. And so I need something like this. And I have found that it's pretty easy to use this. And I haven't tried the others because I had such success with this one. Right. So let's talk now about our friend Oprah, Pete, because Oprah, which is Harpo as well, you remember her Harpo Studios, Pete. There's a picture of Oprah, and the lady looks great. And a lot of people have been pointing out how great she looks, and the fact that she says, you know what, I'm going to step away from WeightWatchers. And she didn't accuse them of, encouraging yo-yo or up and down. But for her, she's found that losing weight through things like WeightWatchers, perhaps, again, she didn't name them specifically, or, the Atkins diet or many of these others caused her weight to go down and then right back up and then down and then right back up. Well, so a lot of us suspected that perhaps she was on Ozempic because she's been losing so steadily, like many of the folks on like the Real Housewives of LA or any of those shows, Pete. All they do is talk about how they're all on it. Are you on the O? Yeah, I'm on the O. Well, the only thing about that, there's a lot of good things about it because obviously diabetes is something that people that are prone to gaining too much weight, well, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, various types of diabetes, which means you're setting yourself up for a kidney transplant and all the rest. But you got to stay on this stuff forever, Pete. unless you changed your eating habits, which I don't think very many people do. Instead, the Ozempic is causing you, or any of the derivatives thereof, are causing people to cut back on how much they eat. That'll work as long as you're on it. As soon as you get off it, if you haven't changed your discipline, you could find that weight coming right back.
Yeah, and she has such a platform, John, that whatever Oprah says, people follow, whether it's right or wrong. And I'm not saying it's wrong all that often, because clearly this woman has amassed an unbelievable career in what she has done. So kudos to her. You and I know her. We knew her in Chicago. She's been a great entrepreneur in so many different areas. But this Weight Watchers thing, here's the interesting thing, John. 2018, June, Weight Watchers was trading $100. May of 2021, $39. It was $8.50 at the start of this year. You know where it is now? Last I looked, it was trading $2.89. I would challenge you to throw up a chart when you're sitting at home and taking a look, and you might want to look at Eli Lilly or any of the others that have anything to do with this weight loss drug world, which it's expanding as we speak. Everybody's going after it because that is the AI, quote unquote, of what we see in healthcare right now. Makes it very, very interesting because her chart is going down, and I think she realized, you know what? I probably ought to step away. And she's doing it the right way too, John. She's got plenty of money. We know that. That amount of money will be there forever, and it'll probably keep growing forever. But that being said, she's actually donating what she had in terms of the dollars that she had put into Weight Watchers. So kudos to her. She's doing something very nice once again, like Oprah is known to do. And I think she realized, hey, man, the Weight Watchers is a great thought, but not everybody has that kind of discipline. Meanwhile, you get on Ozempic or any of these other drugs, it suppresses any kind of appetite, and you just don't have any interest unless you don't have the shot. Then you got a problem.
Yeah. We will follow this closely, folks, and that's Novo Nordisk is the Ozempic producer, Bristol Myers. And then we talked earlier in the week about new competitors that don't have a product out there yet. They're testing it. They're through phase 2 testing and so forth, but there will be more and more competition in this space now that they know what works. And as far as Weight Watchers, I am a little concerned about, the stock losing so much of its value so quickly, Pete. So it's losing its value faster than people on Ozempic are losing weight. All right.
It's the Peloton of weight loss, John.
Well, Pete, we've got some pretty cool videos that we love to share with people as we go from segment in the sports side over to the segment from stocks to sports and so forth. And I think you guys should check this out, posted by the US Open, because this is pretty phenomenal, this video. Take a look, everybody. 146 miles an hour.
That's all. Give me more.
How do you defend against that kind of surgery?
How do you defend against that?
I mean, honestly,
Pete, these guys look like Mark Fisher trying to return it. The guys are practically putting both hands on the racket just to steady it because that ball's coming in so fast.
It's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, John, you know what they got to do? They got to make some sort of something in the sport to give the opportunity for the others. And I'm not even kidding. I mean, it's kind of like golf, right? They now all have these clubs where the head is this big and these guys are hitting the ball 380 yards. I mean, they're literally driving the green, right? On like a par 4 or 5. It's just crazy. And they ought to scale back. They are professionals. Scale those son of a guns back. Let the public use those things if they want to. Hell, it's actually affecting how they've got to build the golf courses out there. And this all comes back to tennis because it all started with, hey, man, suddenly these guys, the racket used to be wood and it was this big. And then all of a sudden they start going to all these really great different types of plastics and everything else. They're lighter, they're stronger, they're everything. And by the way,
the flex different.
So yeah. I don't know. I think I've always thought in tennis it would be much more fun if they actually went back to the days of a wood racket and make these guys play tennis because they're so damn good. We'd still enjoy it, But now that, it's kind of like bang, bang, that's that point. Bang, bang, that's that point. I mean, it's gotten to be that. And like this kid serving, you're putting the ball up there at 150 miles an hour. Somebody could get hurt. But anyway,
Yeah,
John,
seriously.
I thought we would jump into the sports now. So let's just jump into this now. NBA, we don't talk about this a lot. We talk about it once in a while. People think I'm a homer because I'll bring up the Minnesota Timberwolves. That doesn't mean I'm a homer. Here's what it is, John. There are two teams this year that have been absolutely phenomenal all year, sitting at the top all year. You've got the Boston Celtics, who have this great history. And right now, John, at home, they're 27-3. You know what the Timberwolves are at home? 22-6. These guys are leading the West. Boston's leading the East. They both have over 42 or more wins already this year. But they've got a lot of similarities, and I thought that you and I could kind of kick this around a little bit. So Boston plays great defense, explosive offense. Timberwolves, they play great defense, explosive offense. They don't just have offense. They're not Golden State. They're not just going to try to outrun you. They actually play defense, right? And the Lakers and these other teams that don't want to do that type of thing. These teams are built to win no matter how the ball is bouncing, right? So I find it really, really interesting. By the way, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Timberwolves, they've got Anthony Edwards and Big Cat, Karl Anthony Towns. So they've also got Porzingis. He's the guy who's kind of on the court, but he's almost like a great rebounder. He's also scoring points. There's no doubt. We've got Rudy Gobert at Minnesota. That guy's 7'2", 260 pounds, John. And let me tell you, a rebounding machine. And he's starting to score a little points too. And the other piece is they both have a sixth man. And Naz Reid, nobody else really knows much about this kid, but let me tell you, he is a stud. He comes off the bench. He'll give you 18 to 20 minutes. He'll also probably score 15, 16 points. They've got Al Horford. So they've got so many familiarities, John, with each other. And then I think about Boston. Well, they've always had that sixth man. Remember Kevin McHale, the old Minnesota kid? He went from Minnesota, went to Boston. He was always a sixth man, but he would have been a starter on any other team in the NBA. But he was the perfect guy because his ego didn't get after him. He would jump in there as the sixth man. And that's when I think that Boston really had other teams because they didn't go for that sixth player. They just put all the money in the front five. But I think that this could end up being a really, really good year. And we're already seeing that some of the ratings, John, are a little bit better this year because it's not the same old teams all the time. You do have Boston, but you got Minnesota. You still got Denver, who over the last couple of years has been pretty damn good. But you're seeing an influx of teams that no longer is the Lakers and Golden State or San Antonio. Sorry, Pop, but you stink. And you let those guys sit on the bench over there like a bunch of clowns. I mean, you've got to get the fans back in the game. They're coming back because of the right teams that they're doing it the right way. What do you think about the NBA? Are you excited about them at all or not really?
Yeah. And Pete, I was rooting for this kid, Luka Doncic. And I'm not trying to merge his names, but his first name's Luka, last name Doncic. And the kid, all he did was score like 30 points a night ago, Pete. Mm-hmm. And it was his 25th birthday. Huh. So you've got LeBron, LeBron had a great game. Don't get me wrong. I mean, against the Clippers, LeBron scored 21 in the fourth quarter, Pete. Yep. So for people who are LeBron haters, I'm not. But I'm not a LeBron lover either because too many people keep trying to tell me he's the GOAT, and he ain't the GOAT. Michael Jordan is.
There's 5 in front of him, maybe 10 in front of him.
Maybe. But he scored 21 against the Clippers, but it's the Clippers in the fourth quarter, Pete. Fourth quarter, he did 21 on his own to pull away and beat him. But Doncic scored 30 the other night, and I think Mark Cuban is very happy and very lucky to have that guy. So there are up-and-coming superstars. Pete mentions them a lot, and a lot of them do play for the Timberwolves. But Luka Doncic, that kid is special, and he's only 25, not 38 like LeBron. So he's got, assuming he can stay healthy, he's got a lot of years ahead of him, Pete.
And there's some ballers out there in college, John. We're not far away from March Madness because tomorrow begins March. So that ought to be pretty fun. All right. we talked about the combine. We teased about the combine. Now we're getting to talk about the real combine, because today, John, they're not just getting their legs pulled on by doctors and looking down their throat and asking about intelligence tests and all these other things that they go through the first few days. We finally get the linebackers and the D linemen out there running the 40 and doing all these different events right today. That'll be exciting. At Lucas Oil Stadium there in Indianapolis. But here's what I got for you. I've got kind of a list of who I think is probably, now some of them are maybe not sleepers, although some of them are, or names that you maybe don't know. But Peyton Wilson, for instance, John, linebacker from NC State, 6'4", 230 pounds. The kid can do it all. But how many people can any of us name who play for North Carolina State outside of the fans and alumni of them, right? So a kid like that, if he runs a sub 4.5 40, which is what they say they're expecting him to do, he's got strength, he's got size, he's got speed, and the guy is a tackling machine. And I think if he runs a number like that, more and more of these scouts will actually start saying, we may have to realign where we're going to be positioning for when we have needs at linebacker. It might have just gone up, because if you've got a guy who's got that kind of speed, John, suddenly he becomes a giant safety for you, really, because he can play linebacker. He can line up at the strong safety position on third downs. You don't have to take him out, and this kid can run. So I thought from a linebacker perspective, he's the guy who stands out the most. But how about the D lineman? You and I have talked about this Darius Robinson. He's the Mizzou kid who's just an absolute freak. He's 6'5", 295, edge rusher. Edge rushers are usually like Dallas Turner, this kid from Alabama, 6'4", 245, right? He looks a lot like Anderson last year, who was the rookie of the year on the defensive side, who went to Houston out of Alabama. Surprise, surprise, Dallas Turner out of Alabama, almost the exact same size, 6'4", 245, can run some damn good 40 times, I think, John. But you brought up a couple D linemen, so I wanted to focus on those guys as much as anything. Byron Murphy out of Texas, he's only 6'1", 310. But how about the kid next to him, Devondre Sweat, 6'4", 365. 360. John, I'm telling you right now, if you want a guy, and if the NFL is doing what they should be doing, which is, hey, we're going to run the football once in a while, and the teams that do run the football win, and they win playoff games, and they get to the Super Bowl, and they oftentimes win the Super Bowl. This is one of those guys who can maybe slow down that running game, because when you're standing there at 6'4", 360, 365, there's not a whole bunch of offensive linemen in the interior who are going to be able to move this guy out of the way. And we saw that last year. Texas had a heck of a football team, and it's because those two big defensive linemen kind of made that defense really solid. So is there any names that stand out? You brought up Peyton Wilson to me a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I started looking into him, and man, I didn't know he could run the way he looks like he's going to run, John. But if he's like a 4.48, look out. That kid's right in the first round somewhere very high, probably.
Yep. And Pete, I'll throw one out that I don't think is a first round pick, but, and you probably are one of the few people who would know of him other than the scouts, and that's Kalen DeLoach. And you might say, yeah, but Johnny's 6'1", 215. That's what they list him at. Apparently he is close to 6'1", Pete, but he's only 200. So what I'm going to throw out to you, Pete, is even though he's invited, he's a combine guy, he is going to be a D-back or a monster back, depending how you put it. Now, we both have seen huge, I mean, when you were at the Seahawks, Pete, wasn't Kenny Easley there?
Yes, monster.
He's 230, right?
Oh, and 6'3" or 4.
Right. Well, so there have been big, hard-hitting safeties and strong safeties in particular, not free safeties necessarily. But I think this guy, DeLoach, Pete, even though he played linebacker at Florida State and he played that in the Senior Bowl, because of his size, they may have to move him to like a strong safety sort of position, because the kid can cover the pass. He is fast, but at 200, he can't play inside at all, in my opinion, Pete, in the NFL. And I don't think you want to put him out there on an island on the outside either. But if he has a little more room to move around, can he be the guy that comes knifing in and makes big tackles, especially because he is a hitter on top of everything else. Watch that kid, Pete. And if he puts up some impressive cone drills as well as, the 40s and so forth, I think this kid could be one to watch in the pros.
Yeah, it reminds me of like an Ed Reed or any of these bigger safeties that are out there that can run and they can hit, and they've got all the different tools. Kenny Easley, most underrated safety ever. And I think the only reason that Easley was underrated, John, was his career was short because he unfortunately had some kidney problems. So that really kind of constrained him a lot. He came out the same year as Ronnie Lott, who lasted forever and was one of the greats of, maybe one of the best of all time. But Kenny Easley was bigger and could run. And if he didn't have the kidney issues, we'd be talking more about him than probably almost any safety ever. So I agree with you. Some of these guys are so athletic that they could probably play 3 or 4 positions out there at any given time. I mean, it's unbelievable. So should be a lot of fun. I look forward to today's combine. I can't wait.
Me either. I can't wait. And folks, I'm sure all of you can't wait for Monday because Pete and I will be back with The Rebel's Edge, 1 p.m. Eastern Time Monday. Make sure you have a great weekend and tune in for all of our broadcasts at marketrebellion.com or our Twitter account as well. Thank you, folks. See you on Monday at 1 p.m.